Hello everyone and welcome back to Witchinary. If you have yet to subscribe to this channel, please do so because we're getting crafty. Today I wanted to share with you 4 creations that I made using the Simon Says Stamp June 2018 Fly Me Away kit. I in total made 8. I know, 8. So unusual. But guys, I was super inspired by this kit. It's so beautiful. And it had so much potential that I just could not stop creating things. And it was so intense, I actually did not mind parting with all of this beautiful paper for it. Yeah, I added a couple of things for my stash, but it was great. I felt like a kid at a candy store just exploring different layouts and just different things and different papers. So I was super happy with letting go of this paper just for the sake of having fun with it. So it is what it is. I made 8 cards. These are the first 4. For my first card, when I saw this floral watercolor paper, I immediately thought I was going to make it into a border. So I cut both of the panels out, or both of the pieces, to make this nice little border. And then I couldn't figure out what paper I wanted to use with it, so I kept experimenting until I came across this, like, hot air balloon paper, and I just decided this was going to be the one. And yes, I cringed a little bit when I cut it in half because it's such a beautiful piece of paper with the town underneath, but hey, you do what you have to do for the sake of the aesthetic. So I was living the fantasy and I decided to go for it. I then trimmed this paper so it could fit onto a A2 size card, and I'm using the white cardstock that came in this kit. But I also, from my stash, pulled out my favorite ultra matte black cardstock in 170-pound weight. This stuff is monstrous. It's like the juggernaut of card making. It is, and it's so matte, and it makes all embossing look just extremely beautiful that I needed to bring it out, and it was what it is. I absolutely love this cardstock. It makes all of my cards feel just heftier, and it gives the recipient a nice feel like what they are holding in their hands is special. It's a tactile experience, so I use it any chance I can, and I felt like these cards were the perfect opportunity. Once I'm done adhering my hot air balloons to that black cardstock and trimming it down so it fits onto an A2 size card, I decide to trim down the flowers to fit. Once I do that, I'm going to pull out some foam circles and adhere all of that down to my card base. I decided to do that because I didn't want to not have a dimensional sort of card. And then, guys, I do the unthinkable. I pull out a Wink of Stella shimmer pen, which you can't even see this stuff in person, so I don't even know why I did it. But I figured if I was gonna post it, I might as well post some of the mistakes that I made too, or some of the things that I changed my mind about midway, so you guys wouldn't repeat the same mistakes I did. But also show you that I make mistakes, because when I'm in the zone where I just want to keep creating, I do things and I don't really think about them because I'm having so much fun. This was one of those. I take a scrap piece of that matte black paper and I heat emboss it using some Ranger Gold Embossing powder. I then zap it with my heat tool to melt that. And guys, I just absolutely love the way that this embossing, or the way that embossing powder just shows up on this cardstock. It's just matte and it's beautiful. Once I'm done doing that, I'm going to trim it a little bit because I felt like that was too long and it was covering the image of the hot air balloon too much. So I trim it, and then I decide that I want to do like a little fishtail on it. I'm not the best with fishtails, but I've been trying to get a little bit better at them, just because practice makes perfect, and I really like fishtails. I'm going to then just prop that up using some foam circles again to give the same dimension as the lower panel with the flowers. And just like that, I decide that this does not have enough embellishments. I pull out my Nuvo crystal drops, and this is just the clear, and I just decide to do a couple of dollops all over my flowers, because what says realism than putting some clear drops on some watercolor fake flowers? And just like that, my first card is done. For my second card, again guys, I was playing around so much with this kit, like I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with half of these cards ahead of time. I knew I didn't want to repeat the same trick twice, so I decided to split that second panel that I made in half, so that way I can have like corner frames with these cards instead of having one full one. I also thought I wanted to use this hot air balloon image because it's beautiful, and I thought I wanted to use it for this upcoming card, but I decided against it because the flower borders were just too big. So then I put it against a white piece of cardstock, and I loved the way that looked, but I thought that it was too plain. I guess if this was like a engagement card, it would have been great, but not for me. So I pulled out a piece of that beautiful watercolor paper that came in the Hero Arts kit this month, which was super hefty. And I also pulled out my Metallic Accents watercolor paints, and I decided that I wanted to do some ink swooshing with the pink color. I wanted this card to have a little bit of shimmer because I felt like I wasn't getting enough of it with my Wink of Stella pen, and I don't know what it is about me, but I just, sometimes when I get into the watercolor like state of mind, I just want my cards to be bedazzled and to sparkle, and for my friends when they're getting in the mail to like see it as the mailman brings it to them. Like, that's how shiny I want them. But I digress. I then take some of the blue metallic paint, and I just try to swoosh that all over my watercolor paper, and then I take some gold, but the gold kind of looks like green, and that's because I just have this little piece of acetate for all of my ink swooshing, or my paint swooshing, and I did not actually clean it, and that's why that looks like that. It is what it is. I zap it with my heat tool to just dry it all because I don't want to really wait around, and after I'm done doing that, I decide that it's time to like adhere all of this down. So I take my glue tape runner, and I adhere this down to some cornflower cardstock, and then I start kind of like experimenting with how I wanted my little corner borders to go. After I decide on that, I take out my mini Misti, and I use some intense black ink from Hero Arts because it's my favorite and the only one that I honestly own to just get a nice saturated sentiment in the corner of that says "sending lots of joy." I do off camera take my Sharpie and I fill in the word joy so that way it stands out a lot more. And then I take some foam circles to just prop up these two borders, just give this card a little bit of dimension. And obviously it does have some metallic sparkle, which I really, really, really like. And that's also really, really cool. I also take some of my oyster gray drops, and I decide to make a nice little like like a nice little road for it, but it is what it is. I also took out my shimmer pen again, which is ridiculous because honestly it's just like so extra, but here's this card and I hope you enjoy it. For my next card, I decided that I wanted to take that piece that I split from the hot air balloon paper, and I get the idea that if I cut this other paper that had the watercolor brush strokes, that I could kind of make this town look like it's at sunset, which is something I've been wanting to do with watercolor lately, but I can't seem to get the right colors. So I was really, really happy and pleased to know that I could do this with a card. So I start off by matching the color that I'd split off from the card below with the color stripe that I was actually cutting off. So it kind of just made this transition a little bit more seamless and like a more abstract sunset, and I really, really like that. I then trimmed down these two cards, or these two papers down so they could fit onto an A2 size card, and for a while I thought that this was going to be on like a piece of that gold cardstock that came in the kit, which I really loved, but it just kind of wasn't doing it for me, so I decided against it. I do, however, pull out my ultra black cardstock again because I did want like this to have a nice vivid black border around it, just because it just brought everything together and it made this kind of look more like a photograph, I guess. So I really enjoyed that bit. And I also wanted to play around with like what card base did I really want. I wasn't sure if I wanted the peacock the peacock base or if I wanted a white base. So that was kind of a struggle. You guys know how much I struggle with color. It's really hard for me to use it sometimes. But for this particular card, I thought that it was best to go with a white card base because it just didn't distract too much from the colors and the feel that I was going for this card. And I honestly cannot wait to switch tape runners because I do use a lot of adhesive to get these things to stick down. As you guys know, crafting is kind of an expensive hobby, so I try to give myself a budget with every like paycheck of mine. So I have rotations. I have like a little shopping list of things I need to get. So I'm no different in that way. I really can't wait to change this up. Once I'm done adhering everything down to my ultra black cardstock, I'm going to adhere that card base or that card panel to my base. And then I'm going to take a strip of that same ultra black cardstock. You can honestly use like the gray that came in this kit, the smoke cardstock as a substitute. You can use any other cardstock you have lying around. This isn't particular, this is just my preference because you guys know I have a problem with color sometimes, but I don't know. I did take a strip of this cardstock and I decided to heat emboss some white paper source embossing powder with the sentiment Love and Hugs. And I just love the way that this turned out because it kind of did mask in person that like halfway point where the two colors of the cards changed, like where they're half and half. So I really did like that. I propped this up using some foam tape, and once I'm taking that tape off, I just taped that down to my card base. Also, I had to like take out some of the little fluffy dusties that were on my actual sentiment, and there you have it. Before I'm done though, I do decide to take out my ebony Nuvo Drops and do a couple of like circles on the top, and that's just because I felt like, you know, this place would have like a chimney going, and this was my chimney. For my next card, I couldn't just not use that gold piece of paper, and I couldn't like just not use this image, so I decided to take the hint and bite the bullet and just put the two images together. I do a lot of paper trimming, of course, in this video, and it really shows just how bad I am with my spatial intelligence. But I really want you to see this because I'm really not perfect. After I'm done making sure that this is gonna fit, I take a piece of ultra black cardstock again, and believe it or not, this is just 2 sheets. I probably used 2 sheets of this for my entire 8 cards. Wasn't anything super special. After I'm done finally measuring everything and trimming everything down, I adhere my gold panel down to the black, which is, I feel, an old school technique, just do some paper layering, but I'm not too young or too old to like say this is an awesome method sometimes when you want to like add a little bit of interest to a very simple card. I adhere this down to my smoke cardstock, and then I'm going to adhere this down again with some foam, I mean not with some foam squares, but with some tape runner down to my card. And once I'm done there, I did want to add some sort of dimension to this card. So I decide that after I stamp down the "You Are Loved" sentiment using my mini Misti, because I do want to get a really nice saturated impression on this, I do take out some Nuvo Drops and I do add them to this card just to give it a little bit more interest. I take out, here I can actually show you, I take out my Sharpie and fill in that sentiment so that way it's not like crazy floating against this beautiful image. I thought it was a good touch. I honestly thought about taking out some glossy accents and really bringing that word to life against this, but then I thought like, okay, Marissa Bell, let's edit ourselves. You're going a little bit too hard right now. So I calmed down, guys. See, I can do it. And here's where I take out the clear Nuvo Drops, and I just decide to add them into card. So there you have it. These are my first 4 cards, and I really hope you enjoy. Stick around for part 2 coming soon.